Hey everyone, welcome to the program, WRSA Radio. I am your host, Grenadier1. As always, I hope you're having a good week. I am doing well. This week has been fun on the national and international stages, I guess. We see continued escalation in the Ukraine with Russia and NATO pushing closer to conflict. Although late in the week, I think we have seen the first drawback on the part of NATO. This would be President Biden during his press conference on the situation, giving indications that we are not prepared to put troops into Ukraine and that basically the Russians could roll right over them eventually. And then he made the eyebrow-raising statement that it could be just a minor incursion. That of course didn't sit well with the Ukrainians, who responded that, no incursion would be minor. In the meantime, the United Kingdom, in very historical British fashion, has been spending all this time just pumping cargo load after cargo load of more advanced anti-tank missiles into Ukraine and other things, I'm sure, as well. They're basically operating an air bridge, as it's termed. Now, here's my supposition on this. After looking at all of this and taking the situation into consideration, I'm leaning towards the idea that what is happening is kind of a trap being laid for the Russians at the expense of the Ukrainians. And I don't think NATO has any real plan to do any kind of deployment in country there. I believe that what they're planning to do, or planning to try to do, is bleed the Russians as much as possible, possibly even getting them bogged down for weeks, with the intent to just destroy as much Russian armor as they can and embarrass the Russians. I think the mission has just become bleed them and make them pay a heavy toll for whatever ground that they take. As I said on a previous video, I'm not of the opinion that the Russian army is in tip-top shape and as capable as many others seem to believe. They're capable, but I just don't think that they are the top tier in the world, as some people seemed fanboys, in my opinion. Something that the fanboys, don't seem to take into account is that while it is true that the Ukrainians are also not very capable, many, if not most, of the fighters that they've been fighting in those breakaway republics over the last 5 to 7 years have been Russian. There were wave after wave of Russian, they called them volunteers, who poured into those areas to fight the Ukrainians. Now, these were active duty Russian military who were being given leave to go fight with these rebel forces, and if not being covertly deployed, by Russia themselves. And when you look at the casualties that were taken, or are continuing to be taken, over that period of time, and the sheer volume of ammunition and ordnance that has been expended, overall the casualties have been pretty light. I would have expected things to have been much more bloody and much more costly for all of these forces that were involved, considering how much they shoot. And when you watch the videos of these fights, what you'll see is a lot of low-skilled fighters on both sides of this conflict, and this includes those active-duty Russian soldiers. Neither side has really been able to launch any kind of effective offensive operation. The lines of battle have been fairly static. Now, of course, those rebels are fighting what amounts to a defensive battle, so you would expect that they would not be, launching a lot of attacks. However, they have to counterattack to retake any ground that the government forces might take. So there is this back and forth that you would expect to take place. And what you see is that they essentially have fired off just a shit ton of ammo at each other when either side tries to attack, and then they take casualties, and then the attack just stalls out. And that, like I said, that's just happening on both sides of the fight. And the only time that this really didn't occur was there was a major attack by the Ukrainian forces that they were kind of drawn into this pocket and surrounded because they didn't have the support and the means of really exploiting that gain. This whole thing just has has had this very World War I feel to it. It's basically a trench war and an artillery war at this point. And what that says to me is that neither side really has logistics capability to conduct a long-term operation. And you could say, well, you're talking about the rebels versus the Ukrainian government. And that's true, but the rebels, for all intents and purposes, were the Russians. They were supplied by the Russians. They were supported by the Russians. They were given tanks and armor by the Russians. All of their existence has been because the Russian government covertly backed them. And you would expect that they would have been able to leverage some of Russia's logistical capability to achieve their goals, and they have to some extent, but really they're still in what you could call a siege situation. They have not been able to stop the Ukrainians from really actively holding a border and shelling them and causing them problems. So they're just in this very stalemate type of situation. And you would, like I said, you would think that having all of that Russian backing and being able to leverage what the Russians bring to the table, that they would be able to kind of go on the offensive, at least in a limited fashion, to push back and gain some space where they could go back in and rebuild and reestablish their republics, and they're not capable of doing that. As impressive as the Russian movement into glorious nation of Kazakhstan was, I believe that was somewhat of an anomaly. I don't think it's indicative of something that the Russians really can sustain for a long period of time. They were not facing any kind of air defense or any real military resistance in that operation. Now, I don't have all the intel, of course. This is my speculation, but I'm basing that off of what I've seen for really the last 20 years for the Russians. They launched an attack into South Ossetia and Georgia back in the early 2000s. And other than that, all of their operations have really been into unopposed countries. They've gone in to support countries, to help out, Syria. They've done some peacekeeping operations. They've been in like Kosovo and some of these other places, but they didn't go into a hostile, invasion type scenario. And I think that says a whole lot that, to their credit, from a political situation, but I think it also says a whole lot of what potentially their real capability is. Now, historically, the Russian soldier has been very mentally and physically tough and capable of enduring harsh conditions. I mean, that's kind of what their reputation is. But they're not necessarily the most skilled soldiers, man for man. Some of their units are very skilled and very capable, but it's not, again, it's not something that they're necessarily, their reputation is. And that's due to the nature of their military and its lack of experience. Their NCOs at the lower level were often not much more experienced than the average enlisted man. For a very long time, they had an issue with men serving just the minimum amount of time on active duty and then leaving. And their basic enlistment is less than 2 years. I think it's even down to like 12 months now, if I'm not mistaken. At one point it was like 18 months, something like that. But they couldn't really keep a good core of NCOs and long-term enlisted men in service long enough to build that, solid cohesion in their units. And I've not seen any indication that this has changed, even after they made reforms in the mid-2000s, 2010, 2012, something like that, to encourage what they termed a contract enlistment, something longer than just the basic service, like a 3-year, 4-year kind of time frame. All of this leads to what I believe is a less professional and capable ground force. And if you go back and think about it, the reason they made those changes is because they wanted to build a more professional and capable army or capable military really all around. And we typically see and kind of focus on weapons and system capabilities, but we're not really seeing them in practice. We see them on paper and what they are purported to do, and not really necessarily how they actually work with the operators that are running them. We have very little to suggest that the Russian military can fully utilize those capabilities in operational practice. We've seen some examples where they sort of craft a situation and demonstrate or kind of showcase something. But I think those, even when they're doing that against another country, those are, very well managed and controlled situations that they have the pace on. That kind of goes out the window once you launch an invasion. So I just don't think that we're seeing a track record here that we can really justify saying that, well, the Russians will just roll right over the Ukrainians. Again, on paper, it looks, that's probably what's going to happen. In practice, maybe not. I think what we have here is a recipe for a Russian invasion that will bog down. Now, I don't believe that the Ukraine can stop them. I think, given some pluck and some luck, that they can seriously make the Russians pay a heavy toll. And that can lead to a low morale army or a not terribly professional army. It can lead to them making mistakes and slowing down their advance even more, which is, again, more compounding failure. And I also think it could lead to a lot of civilian casualties, really on both sides of those borders, but, hopefully not. Like I said, this is me speculating, and I could be just totally wrong. The Ukis may fold like a lawn chair, and the Russians run through them in a couple of days, but I think they could seriously maul the Russians and drag this thing out for some time. And I also think this is something that the Russians are very concerned about themselves. And I believe that's really what's keeping them from having launched an invasion already. Right now the world still has an image of what the Russian military is capable of actually doing. But once they step off that line and they go into the operation, all of that changes. We will have a much more clear picture of what they can actually do. And everyone is expecting them to roll over the Ukrainians in very short order. And if they do not, then there's military planners all around the world who are going to take notice of that. And sometimes it's better for you to keep your enemies completely in the dark about what you're capable of doing, because it keeps them guessing. But we shall see. Maybe some of you have more up-to-date info on this than I do, and what like globalsecurity.org has, and you can educate us if any of this is completely off base, or if you disagree with me. Just hit me up in the comments of the videos or over on Gab. I'm happy to discuss it. Like I said, I could be wrong. This is me speculating just off of what I've learned and seen over the last so many years. But one thing is for sure, when and if the Russians do decide to invade, they will lean heavily on their ISR capability to provide them information that allows their leadership to make better decisions. Now, what is ISR? Well, it's intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. And basically, it's information gathering and analysis. It's a very important part of modern operations. Now, not only is it critical for higher level leadership to have the information to make better decisions, it's important for the leaders that are right there on the ground, the tactical leaders, to have a better understanding of the overall situation so they can make better decisions themselves and demonstrate initiative to support and coordinate with other tactical units in their area. And there are a lot of tools available to the professionals to perform these functions and services for their various forces. And these don't have to be military, by the way. We could be talking about emergency services or disaster response, search and rescue. That's what my experience with this is in. And we could even be talking about media teams going into conflict scenarios, executive protection. There's all kinds of things where this concept and these technologies have applications and places that we can learn from. which is what we're going to talk about here. I don't have really sufficient time or space to get into great detail here, but what I want to point to you is some homework for you to do and to give you sort of a quick overview, which will prepare you for some videos that I'm planning in the near future. What I want you to do is look up a channel on YouTube called ATAK Map. Let me spell that for you. ATAK, and then a space and the word map. And this is the official channel for the TAC team, who are the developers of the ATAK app for your smartphone. Watch all the videos that you can on that channel to learn about this application and what it is capable of doing. And I can also point you to another channel called S2 Underground, which is just a great channel all around. I've been watching a lot of their videos. It's a lot of good stuff. We've seen it linked on American Partisan. But they have some very good ATAK videos showing you how to set it up and run the application in a much more covert fashion without all the Google tracking and cell phone tracking and all that kind of stuff. Go watch those videos and learn as much as you can. Now, why should you do that? Well, what ATAK does is provide what we call a common operating picture and allows for tactical teams to share information with upper-level leadership, as well as off-site information gathering to provide information back down to those tactical teams. And what I mean by that is, let's assume you have a conflict situation in a big city, and in order to document what rioters or protesters are doing, so you can gather info on who they are and their tactics, techniques, and procedures, you want to send in some teams of people to observe, film, and report what is happening. So you're going to send 3 teams in. If you have a tool like ATAK, this will allow you to provide some of that information to them as they work. And it allows, for example, you to set up in a hotel with a small team of analysts to gather all that information from all kinds of available sources and provide, down to those teams, and for those teams to provide information back to you. For example, your analyst might have traffic cameras pulled up via the internet that they can watch. They may have radio monitoring going on. They can monitor social media and other open sources of information that they can utilize a tool like ATAK to feed the most important bits down to those teams on the streets. Think of something like, Team 1, social media is reporting that there's a big gathering of rioters 4 blocks from your current position. We have radio traffic that confirms that. And then they can place that information on the map in a graphical, user-friendly way that is useful to that Team 1 that's down there on the 4 blocks from that situation. And maybe they want to avoid that area, or maybe they want to go to it. Either way, the leaders can use that information to make decisions. Now, that's a really, really powerful tool, and it can be used in multiple layers and types of situations, from grid up to completely grid down. And I think it's something that we as a movement need to be fully capable and aware of. Now, I will get deeper into this in later videos, as I mentioned, but for now, I want you to go do that homework and learn about these tools. I've mentioned this tool before, and I really want to pound on it and push it, because I think it's, like I said, very powerful and very important. My videos will be less about the how and more about the why and the who. Why would you be doing this, and who would be actually doing this? We have to keep training, and we have to keep sharpening our hatchets. Now, with that in mind, I mentioned last week that we would be announcing some training hikes and ruck marches coming up. Now, when we announce this, it's going to be somewhere in Georgia right now. That's where Concerned American and I both live, and that's just the situation that we're in right now. But don't let that stop you. I know a lot of you will be able to come to us and do those events, train with us, and that's fine. But a lot of you can't. we're trying to pave the way and lay out a model that you can replicate where you're at. And I'm happy to announce, hikes and marches for your location if you intend to do them. So if you want to be the lead on an event, send me the info and I will announce it and have CA announce it over on the main page. And then what you can do is you show up to your designated location at the designated time, and you just put out a little paper sign that says WRSA hike, and you wait for your group to gather. And when you get them all together, you go do your hike, and then you come back and comment on the video or on the Let's Concerned American know, how it all went. And you don't have to wait for us to do this. You can go ahead and just do it on your own, and we really encourage that. And basically, the basic model that we're trying to do is we plan to start with 2-mile hikes with just a small day pack. Try to keep the weight low at first, just some water and some kind of food. Have some means of preparing the food. So if you want to do an MRE, bring the heater bag. Make sure you can cook it. If you have some ramen noodles or something like that, bring a little small cook set. It's more about the time it will take for you to prepare a meal in the field, and it'll give you the experience of doing that, and it'll give you the opportunity to kind of chat with your fellow folks. The idea is that we will walk some time, and then we'll spend some time making lunch. And that gives us all time to, talk face to face and get to know each other in meat space. Now, after we get a couple of 2-mile hikes in, we'll increase the weight of the pack by changing over to the rucksack. And you can do whatever style of ruck you want. I'm an Alice Pack fan, but whatever you guys want to do. But we want to have a minimum of like 25 pounds in the bag. And you can do more if you want. Ideally, if you can get up to 30 or 40, that's better. But at least 25. And you keep doing these 2-milers until your group gets comfortable with it. And then you change the distance. You go 2 miles goes to 4, and then to 6, and then to 8, and then to 10. And, before you know it, you can do 20-mile marches. So that's the plan, and that's how we're going to implement it. I still have to coordinate with CA about what Saturday we're going to start here. I believe we're going to try for the first weekend in February, but I'll keep you guys posted on Gab and on the main WRSA page via Concerned American. So that's all I got time for today, folks. Like and subscribe. Come see us over on the Mothership and on Gab, and I will see you next episode.